Hello and welcome to this new part of the Play Lead Guitar program. We're going to be looking at left hand technique, fretting hand technique that is, and the core components of that. We're going to go through all of that today, and ornamentation techniques, bends, hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, how to incorporate that into phrases in a really organic and new way, so you can always be generating different variations within your phrases, and also looking at an exercise, breaking that down. And this is an exercise that moves through the three different minor modes, the natural minor, the Dorian and the Phrygian, knowing how to naturally find your way around all of those different combinations of intervals. So your left hand basically has like a GPS, it's got something built in so you can always judge the sequence of intervals, because it's really this hand that's guiding you around the neck. And a lot of it is muscle memory, but the ear is involved, and the left hand should be the most connected to your ear. So all of that will actually come out through doing this exercise that we're going to do a little bit later on. But first of all, I'm going to break down the core components and techniques, and then little ways that we can incorporate those into our playing. So first of all, the foundational step is this basic idea of one finger per fret, and this covers scale positions. It doesn't matter if you're playing legato or staccato, or if you're moving on one string or moving across multiple strings. The one finger per fret method is the most foundational thing, and it does vary a little bit between styles. With blues guitar you tend to focus more on three fingers, and they are basically geared up to being able to do more bends or more vibrato or slides. So a lot of the ornamentations actually rely on stronger fingers. And then the more classical technique would be to completely balance the fingers. So you've got much more coordination and balance in a more sophisticated way across the four fingers. So I apply different variations of that just depending on the phrase or the style that I'm going for. But first of all, let's just look at it in its most basic sense, one finger per fret. So the most basic way that you can look at this is that, for example, if we start with this C major scale, then I'm going to be basing it around the middle finger on the 8th fret. That's where the root notes are, on the bottom string and the top string. And all of the notes in that pattern can be found within those 4 frets. So you've got the middle finger covering that 8th fret, and then to play the 10th fret, use that little finger. And we're keeping the index finger in reserve for the 7th fret. So we've got the 7th fret there on the A string. So if you just looked at those first 2 notes, the most obvious thing to do would probably be index finger, ring finger. But that puts you at a bit of a disadvantage going forward from there, because you're going to have to stretch back, and then you're probably going to end up using the middle finger, little finger. Unless you really wanted to stick with 3 fingers, you'd have to sort of do something like this. But let's take it one step at a time with the one finger per fret method, because you will see that even though it takes a bit more time to think about it and to get it instilled, it does give you the most efficient and logical, balanced way of playing across the guitar neck. And like I said, we can change the fingering depending on if we want to do a bend or a slide or hammer on and pull off. We can change for stylistic reasons. But let's just look at this basic approach. So I've got the middle finger there on fret 8, there's the little finger on fret 10, and then my index finger comes in on fret 7, and then logically my little finger takes over the 8th fret, little finger's on fret 10 again. And then on the D string we've got the index finger and then the ring finger, little finger, simply because we're using the 7th fret, 9th fret and then 10th fret. So just that first octave uses those fingers in the most typical way that you'll find them. So fingering tends to break down in this system into one of 2 approaches, or one of 2 groupings of the fingers. It's generally always index, middle, little, or index, ring, little. So starting with the index finger, ending with the little finger. This is if you're doing 3 notes per string. It's going to be starting at that end, finishing at that end, and then it's just the middle note either being a tone or a semitone. And that little formula there will apply to any scale in any position or in any different mode, unless there's a bigger gap. Sometimes, if it's a pentatonic scale, you get the 3 semitone gap, or if there's a harmonic minor scale which has a bigger gap there. But again, the same kind of fingering would apply. You'd just be doing a sort of stretched fingering. But that's pushing it into a different type of scale. So you can see, even if we do use different tonalities, the 1 finger per fret method is still going to give you the best basis that you can then expand on. So just coming back to that major scale, you can just see how there's a nice balance between the fingers there. And then carrying on the G string, it's the 7, 9, 10, so index, ring, little. And then on the B string here, we're going to go straight to the middle finger, okay? Because there's no 7th fret on that string. Okay, so that's something that, again, might not be that natural. A lot of players, especially beginners, might want to always put the index finger on that first note of the string, as it feels a bit more secure. But if you do get used to the middle finger coming in there, then the little finger will play the next note, and then the index finger is available to go straight to fret 7 on the top, and there's the middle finger again. Little finger can get the top note in that position. So the thing that a lot of students would struggle with in the beginning, that I would actually get them to do this on a repeat, would just be maybe to play just that little part of the scale. If you can get used to that, because the independence, being able to play through a little phrase without using the index finger, is perhaps a bit more difficult than when you're using the index finger. There's something about the index finger which kind of steadies the hand and keeps it in control. So if you can learn to just play the 2 notes per string like this, so that's the 9, 10 on the G string, and then the 8, 10 on the B string. Okay, so just take your time with that, and of course it would be much easier like that, or even stretching the index finger. I quite like doing that, actually, stretching the index finger back. Sometimes that works really well. But if you can just get used to that, if you're a blues player, blues rock player, you've probably never had to do that before. But if you want to play major scales and, the different modes that all have 7-note scales, you're going to come up against that at some point. And if you can just get over that little hump, then your playing will be more versatile, and your left hand will have a lot more integrity in terms of all the fingers having a bit of balance and a bit of strength within themselves. So even just playing that second octave, if it feels a little bit grueling going backwards and forwards there, try the whole octave. Okay, so that's the best foundational skill, just to have the fingers much more balanced. If you're playing in pentatonic, for example, let's switch now to C minor pentatonic, you're going to be much more likely to play maybe with just 2 fingers, just the index finger and ring finger, and just those 2 notes per string, using the ring finger back to the index each time. I would often use the little finger on the bottom string, and that doesn't feel particularly unnatural. I think if you get used to that, particular combinations as well, that really helps if you've got a little bit of little finger going on there. And then on the top 2 strings, I would sometimes use the little finger for some of those kind of hammer-on, pull-off type things, or if I wanted to play it's pretty much that. It's a kind of little Jimmy Page move. I mean, Jimmy Page would actually sometimes do that with those two fingers. So some of the blues players, the blues rock players, would often tackle that with the middle finger and ring finger, whereas I would probably be using the little finger a bit more. But if you want to be able to do things like little combinations where you're using maybe the Dorian and, you know, throwing in those extra notes, so your blues playing can become a bit more versatile. If you've just got the pentatonic stuff in there, and then you're throwing in a bit more of, you know, some notes of the Dorian, you're going to need that extra finger. So even in the blues context, you know, having more balance is really, really versatile.